we had to turn on a sixpence when the pandemic struck, because we've been used to going and visiting people in their homes. It's very important as an occupational therapist, as a care and services expert, to see where the person's living, see how they function in that environment, so that we can make accurate, reliable recommendations about what they need now and in the future. So all of a sudden we were faced with not being able to go and see anybody. A lot of the people we work with are quite vulnerable, so we wouldn't want to be going to see them when the pandemic was at its height. And actually we were, like to think we were quite agile in our approach, and we realised that through the use of video conferencing platforms, which obviously came to the fore when the pandemic hit, we've been able to do quite a lot of assessments remotely. So we started doing assessments where we'd use platforms like Zoom and Teams to have a conversation with the individual, and very often they'd be using a mobile device, so they could then show us around their property. And we found that we could achieve quite a lot of the assessment remotely. When visiting was not allowed, because it wasn't appropriate for us to be travelling or to be going to see people when cases were very high, what we were able to do was provide recommendations and a complete report, but with some caveats to say that it would be advantageous or advisable for us to then visit the claimant at a later date when restrictions allowed, so that we could confirm our recommendations. And in some cases, we found that we were able to make confident recommendations without the need for a visit. There are some people we will see whose it's not so much their function now that is what we need to know about, it's what was happening several months ago or years ago, or what's going to happen in the future. So visiting them now might not be so imperative, but certainly with the majority of cases we see, because of the serious nature of the injuries they've sustained, we do need to visit them at some point. But in fact, what we've found is that going forward, we will probably use some hybrid methods. So once restrictions were lifted, we wanted to minimise the amount of time we were spending in claimants' houses for everybody's sake. And so we were doing the first part of the assessment remotely, gathering background information, looking at what had happened to date, and getting a feel for what the situation the claimant was in at the present time, and then following up with a much shorter visit than we would historically have done to complete the assessment, see the individual functioning in their home, and finalise our thoughts on the situation. And what a lot of experts have reported is that this model actually works very well for us, because historically the visits might have been several hours long, 3-4 hours long sometimes, which is tiring for everybody, especially if you've got somebody who's still in the recuperation and rehabilitation phase of their recovery. And so what we'll probably do going forward is do this hybrid approach, where we do some of it remotely on one day, and then some days later complete the assessment in person. And that breaks it down. It gives the expert an opportunity to review the information they've obtained at the remote stage, and then fill in any gaps more easily, because they've had time to reflect and consider what further information they need by the time they do the visit. So in a way, there's been a fantastic silver lining for us, because it's giving us a more varied approach to how we undertake our assessments, which seems to suit both claimants and the experts better.